Thank you very much.
Hare Krishna, Mother Malati Devi Ki Jai.
Krishna, good morning.
Good morning. All glories to you, all glories to Gurudev, all glories to Jagat Guru Shri Prabhupada. And all glories to Asamu Vaishnava devotees. Thank you. Devotees, we're very happy to have your association once again. Today we have Her Grace, Mother Malati, who will be speaking to us from the Srimad Bhagavatam. Mother Malati is our dearest auntie, and she's been so kind to be with us at least once in a month for a very long time. So that is very, very amazing. And what I was thinking, we might not have your association today because of the weather, because of the snow. And here you are. So thank you so much, Mother.
Honestly, if you saw where I was, I had a class. I'm in Grand Rapids, Michigan.
Oh, okay.
And I had a class this morning in their little temple. I couldn't even get there. So we did it on Zoom. And people couldn't get to work because of the snow is so dense,
Yeah.
and the removal they don't have enough equipment to get rid of it.
Yeah.
I flew up here Saturday morning, and I had a class in Lansing at 4, so I was to arrive at 2, 1.5-hour drive from the airport to Lansing. I flew into Detroit, and my God, it was such a delay, like over 3 hours. And then I finally got, I get there to the airport. My luggage did not arrive to the airport.
Wow.
It didn't even get out of Pittsburgh. I don't even know.
Oh, that's not good.
I had some involuntary renunciation.
Oh.
But tonight I have another class. Maybe I'll get there. If not, it will be like this.
Wow. Yeah, personally, I was pleasantly surprised to see you on the screen. I said, wow, because Um, almost all the schools in my area here, they're all closed today.
Yeah. Where are you?
Harrisburg, Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
Yeah, very close to Gidanagri. So the schools have all closed. So, devotees, we thank you for being here. And Mother, we can't thank you enough for being here. And it's so beautiful that we have you speaking today, because today is the last text
Yeah.
of the chapter 7,
Yeah.
Filled Incarnation. So it's so beautiful to have you end the chapter with us today. So without further ado, I'll put the verse on the screen and you may start speaking, Mother.
Thank you. Thank you everybody who
Hare Krishna.
joined us today.
Very well.
Okay, so 7:2:53. And scroll up just a little bit so I can see the entire, thank you. So go up a little bit more. I want to first say the synonyms. Just go up a little more. Okay, so word by word and translation. And before we start, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So the word by word and their translation. My affairs of the external energy, Varnayata, while describing Amyusha of the Lord, Ishvarasya, of the personality of Godhead, Anumodata, thus appreciating, Shrinvata, thus hearing, Shrataya, with devotion, Nityam, regularly, Mayaya, by the illusory energy, Atma, the living entity, Na, never, Muhyate, becomes illusioned. Now come back down, stop. Mayam Varnayata Musya Ishvarasyanu Modata Shanvata Shadlaya Nityam Mayayatma Namuyati. I'll go to the translation. Translation by His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada.
Yeah.
The Lord's activities in association with His different energies should be described, appreciated, and heard in accordance with the teachings of the Supreme Lord. If this is done regularly with devotion and respect, one is sure to get out of the illusory energy of the Lord. I'll repeat that last sentence. If the activities of the Lord in association with His different energies are described, appreciated, and heard in accordance with the teachings of the Lord. So if this is done regularly with devotion and respect, one is sure to get out of the illusory energy of the Lord. Srila Prabhupada's purport. Move it all the way up. Move up more. Stop. The science of learning a subject matter seriously is different from the sentiments of fanatics. Srila Prabhupada had a very colorful way of describing things. Fanatics or fools may consider the Lord's activities in relation with the external energy to be useless for them, and they may falsely claim to be higher participants in the internal energy of the Lord. But factually, the Lord's activities in relation with the external energy and the internal energy are equally good. In other words, anything related to the Supreme Lord is equally good. However, on the other hand, those who are not completely free from the clutches of the Lord's external energy should devoutly hear regularly about the activities of the Lord in relation with the external energy. They should not foolishly jump up to the activities of the Lord's internal energy, falsely attracted. Say that again, falsely attracted by such activities as his Rasa Lila. The cheap reciters of the Bhagavatam are very much enthusiastic about the activities of the Lord's internal potency, and the pseudo-devotees absorbed in material sense enjoyment falsely jump to the stage of liberated souls. It means they're not liberated, but they're acting like that, and thus fall down deeply into the clutches of external energy. Up further. Thanks. Some of them think that to hear about the pastimes of the Lord means to hear about his activities with the gopis, or about his pastimes like lifting the Govardhan hill. And they have nothing to do with the Lord's plenary expansions as the Purusavataras, and their pastimes of the creation, maintenance, or annihilation of the material worlds. But a pure devotee knows there's no difference between the pastimes of the Lord, either in Rasa Lila or in creation, maintenance, or destruction of the material world. Read that again. A pure devotee knows that there is no difference between the pastimes of the Lord, either in Rasa Lila or in creation, maintenance, or destruction of the material world. One time, Srila Prabhupada described Bhagavatam as like a piece of sugar candy. Wherever you taste, it is sweet. And in the same way, all of the Lord's pastimes are sweet, and there's no difference between these so-called material pastimes and these like Rasa Lila, or creation, maintenance, and destruction in the material world. For one who is fully Krishna conscious, there is no contradiction. Rather, the description of such activities of the Lord as the Purusha avatars are specifically meant for persons who are in the clutches of the external energy. Topics like the Rasa Lila are meant for the liberated souls, not for the conditioned souls. The conditioned souls, therefore, must hear with appreciation and devotion the Lord's pastimes in relationship with the external energy. And such acts are as good as hearing of Rasa Lila in the liberated stage. A conditioned soul should not imitate the activities of liberated souls. Lord Sri Chaitanya never indulged in hearing the Rasa Lila with ordinary men. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, the science of God, the first 9 cantos prepare the ground for hearing the 10th canto. This will be further explained in the last chapter of this canto. In the 3rd canto, it will be more explicit. A pure devotee of the Lord, therefore, must begin reading or hearing Bhagavatam from the very beginning and not from the 10th canto. We have several times been requested by some so-called devotees to take up the 10th canto immediately, but we have refrained from such an action because we wish to present Srimad Bhagavatam as a science of Godhead and not as a sensuous understanding for the conditioned souls. This is forbidden by such authorities as Sri Brahmaji. By reading and hearing Srimad Bhagavatam as a scientific presentation, the conditioned souls will gradually be promoted to the higher status of transcendental knowledge after being freed from the illusory energy based on sense gratification. And thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purports of the 2nd canto, 7th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Scheduled Incarnations with specific functions. Om Gyantimirandasya Janana Sakalaya Chakshur Samasitam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namane. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paskachadesatarine Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Sri Vasari Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Vanchakalpa tarubhyascha, Kripa Sindhu Bhaivyacha, Patitanam Pavanevambhyo, Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda Ki Jai. Yeah. So, wait a minute here. So as was mentioned, just 1 second. So as was mentioned, this was today's verse, the final verse from this chapter 7, from the second canto of the Bhagavatam. And it was just talking about the various incarnations of the Lord. And from this chapter, we learned so many lessons, and there were so many deep instructions on how to amalgamate these lessons into our life and how to understand them. The incarnations of the Lord, they're not concocted ideas of men who create an incarnation out of imagination. These incarnations appear under certain extraordinary situations, and they perform these extraordinary, the situation is extraordinary, and the incarnation is extraordinary, and they perform a task which is unimaginable by an ordinary person. We could imagine maybe, but we would not be able to or qualified to actually grasp it as reality. Only under certain conditions, for example, we learned only under certain conditions do the planets float as weightless balls in the air. And as soon as these conditions are disturbed, the planets, they may fall down in the Garbhodaka ocean, which covers half the universe. Now, that's interesting. It's actually giving a quantification of the universe, half the universe. We look out, especially as children, we would look out at the stars in the sky, and it went on forever. And so it seemed, and so it is. But we had no concept of the quantification of the stars and the expansion of the universe. And yet Srimad Bhagavatam gives us an inkling. So the Garbhodaka ocean covers half the universe, and sometimes there's disturbance, and the planets, which appear like just weightless balls floating in the air, they come down. They get stuck in the Garbhodaka ocean. And then the other, which is half the universe, and then the other half is a spherical dome within which the innumerable planetary systems exist. And the floating of the planets in the weightless air is due to the inner constitution of the globes. So this is very valuable information, because then Prabhupada says, but the modernized drilling of the earth to exploit oil from within is a sort of disturbance by modern demons and can result in a greatly harmful reaction to the floating condition of the earth. Now, a whole class could be given about this point, but we're experiencing extreme weather, heat or cold. Icebergs are melting, scorched earth in other areas. And Prabhupada's telling us that these planets, when they become disturbed, then the conditions, the normalized conditions, are also disturbed, and a greatly harmful reaction to the floating condition of the earth, which we are somewhat experiencing even at this point, like with reference to the extreme weather. So anybody who follows the instructions of the liberated acharyas can achieve liberation. Lord Krishna spoke Bhagavad Gita, and Arjuna achieved self-realization. And Prabhupada assures us, even today, anybody who follows the path of Arjuna can also attain the same benefit. And that's the purpose of scriptures. That is why we study scriptures, and that is what they are meant for, to assist us on the path of self-realization. And by following the principles of the great devotees and the instructions available in the scriptures, one can know to a considerable extent the features of the Supreme Lord. Now, the living entities, by our constitution, we are spiritually as good as the Lord. But what is the difference? The only difference is that the Lord is always supreme and pure, without contamination. Whereas the living entities, ourselves, we are apt to be contaminated due to association with the material modes. And this contamination by the material modes, however, it can be completely cleansed by knowledge, renunciation, and devotional service. This was mentioned earlier in this chapter, completely cleansed. Those who directly engage in devotional service of the Lord not only acquire the necessary knowledge in spiritual science, but also attain detachment from material connection. And the result, they are promoted to the kingdom of God by complete liberation. This is assured in the Bhagavad Gita 14:26. And the antiseptic potency of devotional service to the Lord is so great. It can neutralize the material infection, even in the present life of a devotee. The devotee doesn't have to wait for the next birth for complete liberation. This material infection is so deep. Prabhupada called the body, I was reading this, it says, calls our body, the material body, is a temple of disease. And the greatest disease is thinking I'm this body, or a offshoot of that. In the behavior of Lord Vishnu, there's no incident of great anger at any time. We understand great anger is an impediment to devotional service. But in the Lord, there's no incident of great anger at any time. In fact, on the contrary, we were given the example of Bhrigu Muni, who actually tested the tolerance of the Lord by purposely kicking his chest. And instead of being angry at Bhrigu Muni, the Lord begged his pardon. He was thinking, oh, you might have hurt your leg or your foot because my chest is too hard. So this is the transcendental beauty of the Supreme Lord. And because transcendental knowledge is a prime necessity, the ever-conditioned souls, we're given a chance for liberation in every millennium of creation. So the mission of Brahmaji was fulfilled by the grace of the Lord when the 4 Kumaras appeared as his sons. And these 4 Kumaras, Asanas, they were incarnations of the knowledge of the Supreme Lord. So by following in their footsteps, one can at once see the Supreme Personality of Godhead within oneself. And by seeing within oneself, we can also see the presence of the Lord within others. We're told the Lord is in every living entity. But what is that? How do we see that? But here we're told how we can develop that ability is by following in the footsteps of the four Kumaras. Studying the whole scheme of spiritual accomplishments, if you're looking at it, there's a few verses that make some mention how a woman is a stumbling block for self-realization. That may be if one is materially motivated, but the Lord appeared as Narayana to teach the principle of womanly disassociation with a vow in life. So the demigods, being envious of the austere life of brahmacharis, they try to cause them to break their vows by dispatching soldiers of Cupid. But in the case of the Lord, it was an unsuccessful attempt when the celestial beauties saw that the Lord can produce innumerable beauties by his mystic internal potency. So there was no need to be attracted by others externally. In other words, the Supreme Lord cannot be distracted, and nor can he fall down. So a serious person in the path of self-realization can achieve the highest perfection of meeting the Lord and obtain his objective simply by being guided by a pure devotee who automatically approaches by dint of one's serious determination to meet the Lord. So we had the example was given of Narada and Dhruva. Not to go through the whole story, but Dhruva was at that time 5 years old, and he was slighted. He was offended by some harsh words from the co-wife of his father. And when he went to complain to his mother, she said, well, yeah, actually what she said is true. What she told Dhruva was, well, you can't sit on the lap of the king, because kids say if they see a brother or a sister doing something, they also want to do it. I'm staying in a household right now with a couple of kids, and I'm seeing what one wants to do immediately, the younger one also wants to do, and if they can't get it the way they want it, then there's going to be some disturbance. So Dhruva wanted to also sit on the father's lap, and I see these kids, they'll go up and they'll pull the arm of the father picks him up, and suddenly the other one is there and trying to pull the arm off the other kid so they can also be lifted up, and there's like the little battle. Anyways, Dhruva didn't battle in that way. We went to his mom, what to do, and the queen has said, the main queen said, look, if you want to sit in your father's lap, you have to take birth in my womb next time around. That was pretty harsh words. And when he went to his mother, I'm probably hoping for some consolation or some advice. He didn't get consolation, but he did get advice. And at the age of 5, he went to the forest. Nowadays, it would be very difficult even to find such a forest, actually. But of course, Gitanagar, you've got a lot of forests. But anyways, in that forest, but he's very intense, very, very determined. And in his determination, what was his goal? He wanted a kingdom as good or better as his father's. And he was determinedly, in this mood. And his mother had told him the only one who could help him would be the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So he was determined to get that kingdom, and in that determination, determined to meet the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But the Lord sent his dear devotee, Narada Muni, and Narada Muni became the guru of Dhruva and gave him transcendental instructions that alleviated his distress, and he gained enlightenment. Then there was Maharaj Prithu. He was another incarnation. He descended by the prayers of the Brahmanas to rectify the disorders on earth. And he performed the duty of a son to deliver his father from hellish conditions. And long life, obedience, good reputation, righteousness, prospects of being promoted to higher planets, and blessings of great personalities are all vanquished simply by disobedience to a great soul. In other words, we have to be very careful how we conduct ourselves. the prospect of being promoted to a higher planet. So that was mentioned in one of the purports. And when I hear this type of comment, higher planets, heavenly planets, I'm just wondering how many of us even would think about going to such a place? How many of us would even want to go there? Because we've been taught and we understand that those are only temporary situations, although they're far more pleasant on one level than what we experience here. But there are people who want to go to these places and they do what they have to do with great determination. But we want to get to the lotus feet of Krishna, and that requires great determination on our part. The whole process of yoga, under whatever heading it may be, is to control the material senses, because these senses are deviating us from making actual spiritual progress, and thus prepare ourselves for self-realization. So in this age, the practice of bhakti yoga is feasible because it is suitable, just suitable for this age. And the simple method of hearing Srimad Bhagavatam actually leads one to the highest perfectional state of yoga. And there was a mention that out of many mystic performances for self-realization, the process of Jata Yoga was also accepted by authorities. And I was looking up, this is really the only place I've seen this mentioned. And Prabhupada described that Jata Yoga involves becoming like a dumb stone. In other words, you can't speak, unaffected by material desires because you're just a stone. And one practices Jata Yoga by tolerating voluntary infliction of pain upon the material body to control one's senses. So this does not sound like something most rational persons would want to do. In Brazil, there are Christians to this day on the New Year's that they go up to this particular mountain and they make a cross, which they carry up the mountain. So they're emulating Christ. And they, using some kind of hooks, they hang themselves from that cross and see how long they don't die. They don't go through any blood vessels and bleed to death, but they're up there and it must be pretty painful. And they're doing this as a sign of their deep love for Christ, are wanting to develop that deep love. But this type of process is really not something one can successfully develop love of God with. It's involuntary inflicting pain. It's like you could say mode of ignorance, actually. So this method, and then I looked up Jata Yoga. I was trying to find out more about it, like what the philosophy behind it. It's such an ancient thing that it's not even no longer doesn't seem to be apparent, because the only thing about Jata Yoga I could find was a Jata Yoga mats. In other words, it's become a commercial enterprise, Jata Yoga, and they make yoga mats, yoga materials, etc., etc. So obviously, even nowadays, it's not the Jata Yoga as it was has become lost to time, and it's become a commercial enterprise, which most yoga systems have become commercial enterprises in Kali Yuga. Brahmaji knew that in the final devastation that the Vedas would emanate from his mouth. But the Lord in his fish carnation, and he knew that the Lord in his fish carnation would save all the living entities, would save the demigods, because, the final devastation, it's in a deluge, it's a great flood. So the Vedas would come from his mouth, but the Lord in his fish incarnation, he would save all the living entities, demigods, animals, the men, the sages. He would also save the Vedas, this Matsya avatar. One time in Columbus, I had this gray van, and this gray van had big wheels, and it could go through flooded situations pretty easily. So we named it Matsya Avatar. And interestingly enough, that gray van ended up in Gita Nagari, and His Holiness Srila Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, for some reason, he liked to ride in that van, so it sometimes served him. The Bhagavatam gives much information which may not align with our current present experiences, because we're seeing things only through our own intellect, our own mindset, our own attractions, our distractions, our likes and dislikes. So we'll read some information and we may not even like it. The other day in class in New Vrindavan, actually, there was some information that was given. And one of my god sisters was sitting next to me and she goes, I just don't like that. Yeah, that's how it is. Because we can't, it's not aligned with our present experience. But as far as the great sages are concerned, the previous acharyas and Srila Prabhupada, knowledge is received from the Vedic literatures, and authorities accept without any hesitation this knowledge. And we should look through the pages of authentic books of knowledge, the Shastra Chakshurvat. This is where we should look for knowledge and accept the information that is being given. The primeval Lord, he was so powerful, he can do whatever he likes. And his assuming the incarnation of a tortoise or a fish for serving kurma or matsya, for serving a particular purpose, is actually not at all astonishing. Why should we be astonished that the Supreme Lord can do something extraordinary beyond our capacity or even our imagination? We shouldn't have any hesitation to accept the statements of the authentic scriptures, like Srimad Bhagavatam. And one of the most beloved incarnations for ISKCON devotees, members of ISKCON, the incarnation, half man, half lion, all glories to your name, Lord Nrsingadev. He was beyond the imagination of the materialistic demon Hiranyakashipu. Hiranyakashipu, just as strong and powerful as he was. And he had tried to get, we know the story, everybody knows it, how he tried to get benedictions from Brahmaji, so he couldn't be killed. And he got all the benedictions that he thought would cover all the bases. And he therefore was saying, I'm immortal. But what happened? The Lord assumed the incarnation of half man, half lion. He didn't appear from the womb of anyone. He appeared from a pillar. This is beyond the imagination of materialistic persons. And what happened? He looked at this fearful entity, this Hiranyakashipu. He's looking at this fearful entity, and the Lord killed him. Now, some people, actually just recently, about 2 days ago, the husband, he's not a devotee, but he's married to a devotee. And here and there, he struggles with some of what he hears or sees. So he is struggling with the idea that there would, like, why do you have to kill somebody to prove you're stronger? Do you think Krishna was killing Hiranyakashipu to prove that he was stronger? No, he was doing two things at once. He was protecting his sweet, pure devotee Prahlad, and simultaneously he liberated Hiranyakashipu. This is the Lord. And then the pastime of Gajendra, which is really something quite beautiful. Radhanath Swami has been giving some fantastic lectures on Gajendra. You can look them up and hear them. So this Gajendra, he was the leader of the elephants. And he got attacked by a crocodile when he went into a lotus pond. So although elephant's always stronger than the crocodile is stronger when the elephant's in the water, because the water is the element for the crocodile, not the elephant. And because Gajendra was a great devotee of the Lord in his previous birth, even though he was in excruciating pain, he was able to chant the holy name of the Lord due to his past deeds. So every living entity is always distressed in this material world. And because this place There's always distress at every step. But someone who's supported by his past good deeds and engages himself in the devotional service of the Lord, he will be free from that distress. And Gajendra, even though he was being, mortally attacked almost, he still had his trunk. And the Lord appeared before him, and he plucked a lotus flower and offered it to the Lord with his trunk. This is a pure devotee, doesn't get distracted by his own inconvenience. He remembers the Supreme Lord, and by that remembrance alone, he gets delivered. Pure devotees are given the first preference because of their full dependence upon the Lord. Whereas a person who denies the existence of the Lord and sometimes even foolishly declares, I'm God, that's an asura, ungodly. And they're also given a type of protection, but with limited power and subjected to the sanction of the Lord. I have to drink something. So it's not that the Lord is playing favoritism. He's reciprocating with his pure devotees. Another wonderful name of the Lord is Shravana Mangala. So all auspicious means one who receives everything auspicious simply by hearing the holy name. In another part of the Bhagavatam, his name is described as Punya Shravana Kirtana. Such a beautiful Punya Shravana Kirtana. It's a pious act simply to hear and chant about the Lord. So just hearing and just chanting about Lord Krishna, that is an act of piety. The holy name of the Lord and topics in relation with the Lord are always worth hearing, and therefore he's called Nama Deya, or one whose holy name is worth hearing. Then we had Bali Maharaj. He conquered all the planets of the universe, and by doing so, since he was king, he had the rightful procession, because it's explained in Bhagavatam, a king can conquer other kings by strength, and then take the possessions of the other king's property, and it's considered rightful. So Bali Maharaj possessed all the lands of the universe, and he happened to be charitably disposed towards Brahmanas. So then the Lord comes pretending to be a beggar Brahmana. And he's so charming, he's so adorable, like, because he came as a young boy looking, So he's asking Bali Maharaj, because Bali Maharaj was also charmed by his presence. What do you want? Ask me, I'll give you anything. And this little charming so-called beggar Brahmana, he asked for 3 steps of land. And Bali Maharaj was thinking, I can give you your own planet. I can give you so much. Why are you asking for 3 steps of land? On the other hand, Bali Maharaj's spiritual master, Sukracharya, was objecting to this proposal because he knew that Vamanadev was Vishnu himself, pretending to be a beggar. So he's telling his disciple Bali that don't do this. But Bali Maharaj, he rejected his spiritual master's order because he understood that beggar was Vishnu himself, and he at once agreed to give in charity the land he requested. So that's high level. And by this agreement, Lord Vamana conquered all the lands. He took his final step, his 2 steps covered the lands of the universe. And then where was he supposed to go with the 3rd step? Bali Maharaj very gladly offered his head for the Lord's lotus foot. And instead of losing everything he possessed, he was blessed by the Lord, becoming his constant companion and doorman, because he was given his own star. So by giving everything to the Lord, one doesn't lose anything, but gains everything that one would otherwise not even expect. We can't possess all illusory paraphernalia created by Maya. We can't possess it permanently. It's going to be lost. So someone who's possessing so much is more illusioned in the matter of self-realization, and therefore it is just advised, actually it's given as an instruction, one should possess less or nothing. Why? So that one may be free from artificial prestige. So the more one spiritually advances by devotional service to the Lord in exchange for his temporary possessions, the more one is freed from material illusion. So there's no way to lose in this life if we simply voluntarily and willingly and lovingly give whatever we have to Krishna. And to achieve this stage of life, one must be firmly convinced about spiritual existence and its permanent effects. Now, many times when devotees would first join in kind of a immature mindset, give everything away, you know. But such renunciation is actually considered artificial. If whatever you have is useful in the service of Krishna, you shouldn't give it away. You should use it for Krishna's service. Bhaktisiddhanta comments on this. So, sometimes devotees, they would just toss things out the door, come empty-handed to Krishna consciousness, and then later have some regrets about their foolishness and foolish renunciation. So to know exactly the permanency of spiritual existence, one must voluntarily practice possessing the minimum to maintain one's material existence without difficulty. So we keep what we need to maintain ourselves. We keep what we can use in Krishna's service or give it to somebody else who will use it, just like Jayananda. He was the first person to give a substantial donation financially to Srila Prabhupada. And Prabhupada said, no, you keep it, you'll need it. And he goes, I won't know what to do with it, but you do. And then Prabhupada could understand this was a genuine offer, and he accepted it. And the teachings of Lord Chaitanya was printed. So, one of the advice, one should not create artificial needs. This will help us learn to be satisfied with the minimum. Minimum being what we need. Your minimum, my minimum, it may not be the same balance on the scale. So we don't want to artificially put ourselves into difficulty when unnecessary. So the Bhagavad Gita is primarily dealing with the intelligence of man, leading one to the progressive path of civilization of the spirit soul. And the Srimad Bhagavatam teaches a complete human civilization dealing with the subject of the soul. And as soon as a person is raised to the status of the civilization of the soul, and this is Prabhupada's word, so beautiful, civilization of the soul, he becomes fit to be promoted to the kingdom of God. So such a beautiful instruction and practical instruction that we must follow the Bhagavad Gita. It leads us to the progressive path of civilization of the spirit soul. And the Bhagavatam teaches complete human civilization dealing with the subject of the soul. And then as soon as one is raised to that status of civilization of the soul, instead of the civilization of cats and dogs, then one is fit to become promoted to the kingdom of God. And Prabhupada also mentioned that preliminary qualification for entering into the devotional service of the Lord is one must become a willing cooperator. But we have to willingly cooperate, and as such, one should voluntarily cooperate with persons who are already engaged in the transcendental devotional service of the Lord. I think it's in the third canto, 3:25. There's this wonderful verse. And so we should associate with persons who are serving the Lord. But then Prabhupada, sadhu sangha, we take association of persons who are serving the Lord, but Prabhupada says, at doing something. They're not just sitting on the sideline. They're they may be perfectly realized, but we need to go with those persons who are engaged in devotional service, that they're actually doing something that's actually visible and understandable, and that will help people such as ourselves. And then by cooperating with such persons, the prospective candidate will gradually learn the techniques of devotional service. And then progress of such learning, one becomes proportionately freed from the contamination of material association. So the embodied living soul, the entity, we're diseased by the very construction of our body. You know, this body is a symbol of diseases. Prabhupada wrote that. Body is a symbol of diseases, and the diseases may vary from one variety to another. But the disease must be there, just as there is birth and death for everyone. But by the grace and personality of Godhead, not only are the diseases of the body and mind cleared, but also the soul. Our soul is relieved of the constant repetition of birth and death, that cycle of samskara. We want to get out of the recycling of material nature. Another, the Lord has also called this bhava sode, are the source of curing the disease of material existence. And then there was, I'm trying to keep mindful of the time, but I'm not doing a great job of that. Parsuram, the incarnation of the personality of Godhead, and he appeared in a state of worldly affairs and was angry with the miscreant kings, and he was just killing them 21 times over. So many Kshatriya kings, this is very interesting, the Kshatriya kings at that time fled India to other parts of the world. And according to the authority of the Mahabharata, the kings of Egypt originally migrated from India because of Parsuram's program of chastisement. Then we have Ravana. He was so advanced materially that he turned his kingdom, Lanka, into pure gold, full of material wealth. But his flaw, he did not recognize the supremacy of Lord Ramchandra. And he defied him by stealing his wife Sita. Even his wife Mandodari was telling this woman is going to be the cause of your death. And he wouldn't listen. She wasn't envious of Sita. She didn't want to lose her husband. And he just wouldn't listen. So he was killed, and all of his opulence and power was destroyed. Ramachandra, he's a full incarnation with 6 opulence. And he's therefore mentioned as Kalesha, or the master of all opulence. So sometimes people will inquire, how can one surrender? How do you surrender to the Supreme Lord? And in the Bhagavad Gita 1866, the Lord, he discloses to Arjuna, simply surrender unto me, serve me, surrender unto me, serve me. And Arjuna did that, but persons who are willing to do so, who are resisting the Lord's own instructions, they even question, they're unwilling, and they question, well, where is God? And anyway, who would we surrender to? That mindset is there. So the personality of Godhead may not be present before everyone's eyes due to the affliction of the eyes, the cataracts of material life. But if one is serious and wanting the guidance of the Lord, then Krishna will send a bona fide person who can guide one properly back home, back to Godhead. So there's no need of any material qualifications for making progress on the path of spiritual realization. Material qualifications and spiritual realization, they're like 2 different planets. One is eternal and one is temporary. So in the material world, when you accept some particular type of service, it's understood you have some particular type of qualification also. Otherwise, you would be unfit for the service. But in the devotional service of the Lord, the only qualification required, surrender. Surrendering oneself is in our own hand. We cannot go to somebody else for this activity. That is in our hand. And if one likes, one can surrender immediately without delay, and then immediately begin spiritual life. So this surrender sometimes throws people, what are we surrendering? And we're surrendering our complicated desire for enjoyment in the material world. Give it up, goodbye, gone, out of here. So that requires conviction. And it requires determination that I want this spiritual life. Otherwise, how could I do this? Why would I even do it? So there's no need of material qualifications for making progress on the path of spiritualization. You know, it's a very blissful proposition. And the surrender is a very sweet proposition. Krishna said, you know, surrender unto me and I'll protect you from all harm. Serve me. You know, he's giving us by practical words what to do and how to do it. And it's up to us whether we follow or not. So. Actually, it's so nice. Krishna consciousness is so nice. There's just so much to be, there is so much to be offered and so much to be taken. So when we talk about surrender, we're just talking about, it's like if you had a bag of garbage in your kitchen, it would begin to stink, and like, why wouldn't you take it out and toss it out? You know, here we are in this material world, and it's a terrible place, actually. Nobody likes to hear that because it's like, well, wait a minute, you know, but no, it is. And we're constantly getting that reminder. But once we actually understand it and accept that, and we just take that baggage of material life and toss it out and accept Krishna's beautiful instructions, accept his offer, surrender unto me, I'll protect you, have no fear, you know, then our life is instantly blissful. And at that moment, we're actually eligible for a life in a spiritual life with Krishna without having any faltering. We can go back home, back to Godhead.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
So, Mother, are you like prepared to take some questions, comments?
If there are, of course, I'm
Yeah.
here
So,
as your servant.
yeah, we thank you so much, Mother, for the love and the Krishna Katha shared with us today. And dear devotees, if anyone may have questions, comments, realizations, you may unmute and go ahead and speak. And we were also going to humbly request devotees to be straight and direct to whatever they want to ask. Mother had indicated before the beginning of the class that she has another engagement, and we wouldn't want to keep her here much longer than necessary. So we humbly request that we go straight to our questions or points.
No
Hare
problem.
Krishna. Hare Krishna. Thank you so much again, Mother. Mother, I have one question from the beautiful purport Sri Prabhupada gave today.
Yes.
And I actually had a problem with one very senior devotee because he started talking about Radha Krishna pastimes, Krishna Rasa Leela, and he actually blasphemed lots of great personalities, but because he was a very senior and old devotee, I I just kept quiet and listened to him. But what would you advise us as ISKCON devotees when some other devotees are telling us that somebody is not telling us about Rasa Lila, so we are not advanced, and therefore we have to listen to Rasa Lila pastimes, which is against what Srila Prabhupada is telling us here today. So what would be the best advice to discourage devotees not to be taken away by such flowery language from other devotees? Hare Krishna.
Well, one of the points was that we should, I don't know if it was in this, because this is the second class I gave today, so sometimes I get a little mixed up between the two. But one thing is that you have to determine where we're standing, what level we're at, and then if we're speaking out in a situation, what is the level of the audience you're speaking to? And in all likelihood, it will be a mixed audience. If you are with some very advanced, like-minded souls, you can speak as you like, which may include Rasa Leela, but otherwise, we never saw Srila Prabhupada doing that. And he made a point in this chapter that Lord Chaitanya didn't do it either. So if we're that presumptuous, but of course you don't want to say, hey, you're presumptuous, because that person is not going to appreciate it and it can create some friction. But there's different ways you can do it. And you could just say, you could try saying, we're not to this level. And maybe you could reserve those comments for somebody, for others who are equal with you. We prefer to hear other pastimes. Or you can ask them, where does Prabhupada and Lord Chaitanya say to speak to a general audience like this? Or you can say, oh my God, I'm sorry, I forgot I have an appointment, I have to leave, and just get out of there. I mean, it's one way to do it. Okay, little white lie. No, you have an appointment with your mind. Get out of here. I want to save my mind. If you antagonize the person, then it gets into a debate, and then the person is going to go on Facebook and say all kinds of nonsense, because that's what happens nowadays. So better to avoid the confrontation, but to sit and listen. If I gave you a glass of water and I said, oh, by the way, there's poison in this, and you're going to die slowly and painfully, would you sip it? I mean, would that be an intelligent thing to? And you're very thirsty, but we used to. Well, no, not the right time. So we don't want to put poison in our ears. Not that the Rasa Leela is poison, of course not. But if we're not to that level and we're hearing from a person who actually isn't on that level either, then it's like poison. What did Lord Chaitanya do? Of course, this was for the Mayavas, but Vishnu, 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 he covered his ears. I mean, that's another possibility, but then the person will say something probably to insult you. So better is to avoid it altogether. First, you can respectfully ask him to change the topic. Or, oh, I'm sorry, I have to leave. You don't even have to say why. Oh, I'm really sorry, I have to leave, and just leave. Rather than sip poison knowingly. Again, Rasa Leela is not poison, but our level of consciousness can be poisoned by hearing from an unqualified speaker.
Well, thank you so much for the various steps one could take in such situations. Thank you so much. It's very helpful to me personally. So, dear devotees, if anyone may have something to share, please, you may do that before Mother leaves today. Hare Krishna.
I hope I didn't put everybody to sleep.
No, not at all. Devotees oftentimes are quite quiet. So I think it's normal.
I want to again thank everybody for attending, and this is the first class for me in the new year, so wish everyone a year of prosperity in Krishna consciousness.
Yeah.
May your Krishna consciousness evolve and grow unlimitedly. Hare Krishna.
Right. Oh, Father, this is a special blessing we're getting from you today, and we hope and pray that it does happen that way. Because we're all struggling so hard and sincerely to try to serve as much as we possibly can based on the teachings Srila Prabhupada has given us. But sometimes it's very, very big challenge, and it's not so easy. I remember one time,
Hari Chakra has his hand up.
yes, one devotee, one of your godbrothers, asked Srila Prabhupada, said, Srila Prabhupada, this devotional service is so difficult. And Srila Prabhupada said, did I ever tell you it's easy?
Yeah. Well, I always hear devotees go, it's hard. And I'm like, that's not our mantra.
Yes. Thank you so much, Mother. So, Arichakra Prabhu, please you may unmute.
Haribol, Hari
Hare
Chakra.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Mata. Thank you very much.
I always see in a vehicle, and then I'm always praying, please keep him on the road, keep his eyes on the road.
I'm not driving. I have fun.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not right.
Okay, good.
Go ahead, Arichakra
Yeah,
Prabhu.
Mother, thank you for your class. And usually, what I personally have observed that many a time, with the devotees, if we join ISKCON earlier than somebody and the person comes, at least somehow or the other, we want to show off that I'm a senior devotee. I've been here for a long time, and we know you were Mother Malati, you were one of the first people who actually joined Srila Prabhupada. But over the years, we could see how you are able to humble yourself. And I mean, I don't know. So what can you give us some tips, a little bit tips about how you do it?
Every once in a while, I look in the mirror. That does it.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Because sometimes I wonder, how does she do it? But I remember one time we were at New Vrindavan, and I could see you were all over the place. Any trash you see on the floor, paper, plastic, you were picking everything. And I was thinking in my head, oh my God, if this woman can do this, then who are we to be standing there and not doing such things like this?
But we were taught that way by Srila Prabhupada.
Thank you, Mata. Thank you.
Oh.
Thank you for
Hare
do
Krishna.
for us. I mean, we actually appreciate that.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Mother, for being our sweet auntie and especially blessing us all today. So, dear devotees, we're going to handle requests to all kindly. Oh, sorry. Mother, we have one hand up. Gayatri Devi, please you may unmute.
Haribol.
Hare Krishna.
Did she hear you?
Hare Krishna.
Yes.
Haribol.
Yeah.
Dandava pranam. Where are
Thank
you?
you.
Gayatri Devi, where are you speaking from?
Please, I'm speaking from Ghana.
Haribol.
Hare Krishna.
I would like to go back to Ghana for Rath Yatra one more time.
Thank you.
Hey.
And I want to bring Kamagiri with me.
That would be beautiful.
I don't know when the Rath Yatra is, so I would like when somebody knows, let us know, and then maybe we can see if we can pull it off.
All right, we will do that, Mother. Yes.
Okay, Gayatri, please go ahead.
Hare Krishna, Mataji. Mother, please, I have this question and it has been confusing me most at times. Please, I would like to know if Bali Maharaj is a devotee of Lord Krishna. And if yes, how come he's having the spiritual master as Sukacharya Maharaj?
Yeah. Well, Sukacharya Maharaj wasn't only Bali Maharaj as a spiritual master. He was spiritual master, you could say, of the demons. And Bali Maharaj was actually born into a family of demons, but he was a devotee. It was circumstantial. And his true colors were shown by his disobedience to Shukracharya.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank
Circumstantially, like we all weren't born pure devotees. I know devotees, like, they were born into a family that eating meat, they ate meat. All of us, most of us in the early days, because vegetarianism was not so much known or promoted even. And so most of us came from that kind of background. You could say, our parents were demons. People don't like to say that, but by the definition, demon means one who's adverse to the Lord. And so then by Krishna's mercy, meaning in the form of Srila Prabhupada, we got to find out about a higher elevation of life and became convinced. So then we gave up those bad habits out of that conviction. So you could say, well, wait a minute, people have said, they'll look at, devotees who came from the backgrounds that we came from, and, oh, these people, they were this, they were that. That is saying, when people do that, that's saying there's no potency in the holy name and there's no potency in Srila Prabhupada. It's really offensive. That's why Lord Chaitanya, he admonished the town people after he delivered Jagai and Madai. He admonished the people of the town, never again refer to their past behavior. He had purified them completely. And if we can't accept that this process works and you can become purified. So Bali Maharaj, even though he was a devotee, somehow he got put in this condition, but it just was a wonderful Leela that gave an opportunity for the Lord to come as Vamana Dev and further glorify the Lord by his wonderful ability, and glorified. And this is often the case. The Lord is glorified and Bali Maharaj was glorified, because the Lord is happy to see his devotees glorified. So sometimes he'll put the devotees in a circumstance whereby by their activity, they will be given some kind of recognition, and that recognition pleases the Lord himself. So here was this person from a demoniac background who actually displayed his true colors as a devotee of the Lord.
Thank you, Mother. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. I, thank you so much, Mother Malati. And I just felt so extremely happy to hear you say that you want to go back to Ghana for the Rath Yatra.
I know,
and I was wondering, we are all planning on going back, Krishna permitting, next year, 2025. So that will be so wonderful to
let's talk the next time we see each other. Sometimes we see each other. Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Maybe next year if I'm still breathing.
Yes.
Krishna will make us all keep breathing. And
yes.
That sounds like that's a reasonable plan. Even that's a better plan, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just time to prepare.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Hare Krishna.
Jai.
Thank
Thank
you.
you all, and I will take my leave now.
Yeah,
Hare
please, if you may bless us one more time. Dear devotees, if you all may unmute and we all chant Hare Krishna Maha Mantra to express our appreciation to our revered auntie, Jai. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare,
Hare
Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama
Rama,
Rama,
Hare
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 Hare.
Rama, Rama, Hare
Jai.
Person today, but
Pacha Patitana Pavanibhyo Vaishnavibhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namaha.
Hare Bol.
Malati. Hare.
Hare Krishna.
Hare.